Welcome to class today. And to start with, I'm going to show you the critique that I did. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen. So I did a critique. That's not it. This is it. So Leslie submitted your apple. Thank you, Leslie. And you were very brave allowing me to show, all of this. But I think the apple overall was a good drawing. So on the left, you can see the original drawing that Leslie submitted. And so immediately when I see the apple and I see the shadow here that's indicated on the right-hand side, then I'm wondering why it is darker on the outside of the shadow than inside the shadow. So I suggested to do a little bit of a darker closer to the object, then going to a little lighter towards the outside of the object, or going away from the object, which is usually how the shadow is displayed, on the surface on the table next to the object. And these changes I made with my computer, so it's not necessarily perfect, but it gives an idea. So that was one thing that I said. And then after that, here, I said, well, how about if you were to darken a little bit on this side of the background, even though it was white on the background, having a little bit of a grayer tone here, it makes the apple pop a lot better. And then the only other little comment that I made, see here, close to the, is it the stem? Is this what it's called? Yeah, I add a little bit of white. So now we can see that this stem goes inside, whereas here, it was difficult to see. So simple things can make a big difference. But, I mean, I think this apple was, we could feel very well the roundness of the apple. I didn't comment on any of that. So you can see that the light comes from the right-hand side, and then the left-hand side has all of this nice darks, and down here at the bottom you can see the reflected light. This is the light that comes from the right, bounces on the table, and then hits the apple here on the left, at the bottom. So the apple was very well drawn, but then the shadow here and the little, just the little things, a little darkness on the wall would help, and then also where the stem goes.
Thanks.
All right, so now I have to close this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute all of you guys because it helps with the recording. All right, and then if you want to ask a question or add a comment when I show you the paintings, then just unmute yourself and then you can ask a question or do your comment and then you can remute. So I'm muting all of you.
Yay.
I'm going to share my computer again and I'm going to show you this. I think it's this one here. Move this over here. All right. So you should be able to read Drawing Class Composition 3. Can you go like this if you do? Okay, very good. So this is these paintings that I'm showing you by Turner are all very big painting. Oh, someone else is coming to class. They're all very big painting. And this one's called Crossing the Brook. And it's by J.M.W. Turner. All the paintings are by Turner. It's in oil. And without looking at any of the detail, you can see the nice design created by the trees in the foreground here, the line, and then this tree here on the left. It creates a nice design overall where you have everything that's in the foreground and then the sky coupled with the mountains in the background creates this nice negative shape. So that's one way to appreciate a painting to start with. But I also wanted to show you some certain details. So I'm going to go here. So on this page, on the left, you can see the paintings, and just gonna go like this. And here I put 2 squares because I'm gonna show you these sections bigger. So this section here is this. And when you look at the what I have on the right-hand side, it's almost a painting on its own. So within a very large painting, if you look very closely, you can see paintings, a painting within a painting. And with this, you can still see the nice design of the foreground, although there's a lot less of it. And you can appreciate all of the detail that's in the back. And you can see this nice bridge and those buildings here. And then there's another kind of like another little building here in the back too. And you can see the river flowing. So when looking at a painting at a museum, it's nice to try and see sometimes, once you have appreciated the grandeur of the whole thing, then you can look to search for little areas that are also, like I call them jewels. On the next slide here, I'm showing this section, which is the foreground section. So I'm going to go back one. Right here in the foreground, there's something happening by the water. There's 2 ladies and a dog. So this section is what I'm showing you here. So this here is a painting on its own. You have the 2 ladies, you have the dog. It's telling a story just with this section. And then you can further split it. So I split it in 2 different sections. So you have the lady here. She has some kind of a bag next to her, and then the reflection in the water and the dog. That tells a story in its own. And then if you take the other lady and the dog, that tells a different story, because here the dog is interacting with the lady, whereas on the one on the top, the lady is saying, oh, my dog is leaving. Maybe he's going to take a bath. So the interaction is different in these 2. So even though it's a very large painting, there are paintings within the painting. And that's what I like about his paintings. The next one is called, this one's called, oh, it's got a long name, the Dogano San Giorgio Citella from the steppes of the Europa. Well, I don't speak Italian very well, so all these Italian names are not necessarily well said. But anyway, this is also by Turner. And in this painting, I find this painting, which is also a very large painting, very soothing. All these very soft color. The blues are very soft, and the sky with all these nice clouds, and then the blues at the top, and towards closer to the buildings, like on the horizon, these clouds here, they're a little, just ever so slightly darker and pinkier, and that allows for this building to pop. And this boat here on the left-hand side directs the viewer into this area and then brings you over here, where is the center of interest. And if you look from here, it also directs the viewer towards the center of interest. But what I want to bring your attention to is there are 2 sections, this one, which is the middle part, and then the one on the left. So the one on the left, this one here, this is what we see here. This is a painting in its own, on its own. Look at this. So you have the little boat here in the front, and these buildings beautifully done here in the background. And even though this building is white, it still pops from the white clouds. And that's because the clouds are just ever so slightly a little bit more pink than the building. And he's got all this detail here. And it's just by looking closer that we can see it, because when you look here, you say, oh yeah, there's a white building in the background. But there's all this detail. So he tells a story everywhere in his painting. And then if we look at just the middle part, well, that's a painting on its own too. This little guy here on the front directs the viewer to here, and then it curves back to this section and then brings the viewer back to this area. And you can see now that we see it closer, look at all the detail on the tower here and on the wall. And even this building in the back, I didn't really appreciate how beautifully it was done on the big one until I went closer. You can tell I like him. Now this is another one. This is called Rome from the Vatican, Raphael, accompanied by La Fornarina, preparing his pictures for the decoration of the loggia. So Raphael is right here, and he is with a woman. The woman's right here. They're very small, but I will show you a close-up of this section, and you'll be able to see the interaction. So Raphael, he is at the Vatican, and he is talking with this lady called La Fornarina, which I don't know what it means, but anyway. And but in this painting, there are some areas that are very interesting. And I'm going to show you a close-up of this large section here, a close-up of what's happening on the balcony, and also a close-up of this small little square right here. So this section here, you can see on the right-hand side. And in this section, there's a darker background. But what I want you to pay attention to is this building here and how well drawn it is. It's a very good example of perspective. So the roof line it's almost vertical right here. And as we go down on the building, see this, the top of the window, it has a certain inclination, and the bottom of the window is not quite as inclined. And then this window, this series of windows here, well, the bottom part actually goes up, whereas the top part goes down. So this is a very excellent example of, you know, where the vanishing point points to somewhere here in the background and how well it's drawn. And look at all the details that he put on this building. And even now that we're seeing it closer, we can appreciate right here, there's all these rooftops and buildings that he included in terms of all the detail here. And even this wall that curves around. Now this section intrigued me very much, but when we see a close-up of it, this is what's in the left-hand part. Look at all the detail that he put in this little section right here. So this little line here, I don't know if you see it on your screen, but is actually all these little people. Look at this. And there's even like a carriage with a horse that's pulling the carriage. Some other little people here. This column here has a lot of detail. And these buildings here, look at all the detail that he put there in these other buildings. So this is this was his way of expressing what he wanted to express. I'm not saying that I'm inviting you to do the same thing. I would never put this kind of detail in the background, but this is how he did his paintings. This is a very big painting. It was taller than me and much wider than, you know, than it was tall. So it was probably 10 or 14 feet across. But he put all of this detail. I thought it was an interesting little scene. It's a painting in its own. And now this is what's happening on the balcony. So it says Raphael meeting this lady. So Raphael is looking very pensive here. And the lady here has a very nice, beautiful dress. I'm just gonna go like this. She has a beautiful dress that you can see here, the folds on the dress in the background. There's a jewelry here. And we can see his paintings. So he has a couple of portraits that are in the foreground. And see the little people? They're right here in the background. They're so much smaller. This is the little people I was showing you. So I showed you these things because I want you to next time you go to the museum and you look at a very big, large painting, then after appreciating the overall painting, maybe you can look a little closer and see if you see paintings within a painting. So at this time, is there any questions about any of these, or you'd like to do a comment? So Susan, you have your hand is up. Do you know how to unmute? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this or not. I mean, thank you for this. This is, do you have any sense at all or any idea how, I mean, a painting of this size with this much detail, he must have, it's a he, I assume, Turner. He must have had dozens and dozens of little sketches that he made. I mean, how would you, this couldn't be, this is not a still life. So what do you think his process was to put this together? Just if
You
you
know
had
what?
this estimate. Yeah.
I do not know, but for a large painting, I can tell you what my process is when I do a large painting. I usually do a small pencil sketch, like very small. Once I have done that, maybe I'll do a little larger of a pencil sketch, or I'll do like maybe an 8x10 or 9x12 sketch painting of the larger painting. And sometimes I'll select a section and do a study of that section, especially with people like this. I mean, I've never done something this grand, but I have done large paintings of buildings, and that's what I do. I do a small sketch, then a small paint study, then I'll probably do a larger drawing to scale of the actual canvas that I will do. So let's say I do a canvas that will be, let's say 20 by 40 inches. So maybe I'll do a drawing that will be 10 by 20 inches. So it's the same ratio of the big painting. But I'll do a large enough drawing to resolve any of the issues that might still exist when you blow up this small little sketch. Then once I've done that, then I will start the painting without doing any drawing on my canvas. I will draw with my brush, and I will do a very rough sketch to start with, and then after that I will and I try to make sure that I do it to scale. So I try to respect, you know, if there were 10 inches here, then there will be 20 because it's twice as big over here on the bigger one. That's how I do it.
When you say you draw with your brush, you mean with some paint on your brush, or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I start very thin.
Yeah.
And then I build on it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is quite detailed. This
But
one.
yeah, Turner's process, I would have to read on the subject to know.
Well, even I mean, what you described is intricate enough, so I can only imagine how many sketches and sectionals were done to create these large scale pieces.
Yeah. I apologize, my other phone's ringing.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Susan. So does anyone have any other question or would like to see one part of this? So Michelle, your hand is up.
I was wondering, I noticed under the white sheets of paper, which I assume are sketches,
This.
did he print that?
Did
There's
he
something printed underneath.
Oh, yes, yes. Right here. This here.
Yes.
I think this is done with the brush.
Okay.
Sometimes the artist in those days, they would put the title on the painting. It might be that, or it might be something else. I don't know.
Oh.
Janet, you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was late joining because I don't know, my Zoom thing was screwed up and I had
That's
a very
okay.
So I was just going to ask, you said that you don't sketch it when you paint a large painting, you just go from your drawing and then you paint. What media are you using?
Oh,
I mean,
I use
yeah.
acrylics.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was
But-
just wondering because with watercolor, it's like kind of you have to put. No, I couldn't do that. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But I do a grid. So on a large canvas, I'll divide the canvas is in nine squares or 9 rectangles. So I'll put 2 lines this way and 2 lines this way to divide in 3 equal horizontal line and 3 equal vertical section as well. And so my drawing is my drawing will have, you know, the same lines to divide my drawing in sections, so I know what part of the drawing goes in what section of the painting.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I'm going to remute Michelle. Oops. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions on this or would like to see something else? One of the slides again. I don't see all of you at the same time, but guess not. Okay, so then I'm going to stop my share. And now I want to show you what I mean by drawing with the kneaded eraser. So I have set up the same subject matter as last week with bright light on my subject matter. And I prepared this in preparation for this class. So this is simply I just used the pencil and I darkened my page. So this is considered what I will keep as the table, and this is the background. And so using my kneaded eraser, I'm going to draw my pear. So what I see is slightly different from what you see on this from your screen. So I'm going to try and do the pear like you see it rather than what I see. All right, so my pear from what we see is, that's funny, it's different. Yeah. So from what we see on the pear is definitely lighter than the background. So that's why I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to draw it. Now, a kneaded eraser can be kneaded just like the bread. I didn't know this is what it meant, but anyway, now I do. And I'm going to use this to do my drawing of the pear. So the kneaded eraser is just another tool. This is confusing because what you see here, what I see on the screen is reversed from what I see here. So I'm gonna look at my pear. I'm not gonna be able to do like I see on the screen. So the pear is leaning a little bit towards the right, and it's got more light on this side than on this side. So I'm gonna start by, so I'm just pressing a little bit, and I can also drag it, and when it doesn't erase anymore, I can just fold it again. So it's no longer working. So there's a lot of light on this side of the pear. Not so much on the other side. And on the other side, from what I see, the pear is actually darker than the background. So I would have to use my pencil to make it even darker on this side. Comes up here. It's actually this part. And of course my pear comes down here. So it's a mix of using the kneaded eraser and the pencil. So now I'm evening out. I'm not trying to do the contour of the pear. I'm trying to do the mass. But the background's actually darker than what I have it now. So I'm going to make the background darker right here on the edge. And that's going to help me. See, even just with this, it feels more round. I didn't put this stem. The stem is tricky because there is some light on the stem that comes from here, whereas this section is darker than the background. So the stem will go like this. So it's darker than the background on this side, but lighter than the background on the other side. So I'm going to make this very skinny like this, and I'm going to remove some of the darkness here like this. A little bit more maybe. So when doing this, just remember to breathe. Very important. Then you can go on this side and make the background a little darker. So see, the background can vary, be a little darker here, a little less dark there. You can just adapt it to what you need. See? Now we can see the stem, and we can see the light on the stem. And the pear is looking pretty good. Of course, it's not finished yet. You know what? I should have regulated my air conditioning better because I'm dying of heat. Whew. All right, continuing on. So the great thing with that is that it creates a nice soft edge when drawing with the kneaded eraser. And if I remove too much of it, then I can add back. You know, if I remove too much of the darkness, I can add it back. Now this here is actually, the fold is a little too high, so I can use my kneaded eraser to reshape it. Yeah, this is better. And then I can just, where's my 4H? I can just add the background back on. Too light? So I'll use the HB. There, that works. So this part is darker. It's actually a lot thicker at the top. So I'm just gonna move a little bit of it on this side. Now that's better. And looking here, you can see that this section is darker. But over here, I have some reflected light. So I'm going to have to use my kneaded eraser to indicate that reflected light. So this whole section is pretty dark. And it's much darker than the surface that it's on. Well, actually, here it's darker than the surface, and then down here it's the reverse, because there's so much reflected light at the bottom. So it changes. So I'm going to indicate this shadow. It's about like this. You can't see that shadow as well. You don't see at the same angle exactly. And then the shadow mysteriously becomes lighter. So it changes. It's very, very interesting. And actually there's more reflected light here. So I can lighten it. So from the angle that I see, the table is darker. Because it's in the shadow down here. And then as it comes around, the table becomes lighter than the object. So it changes. And then the background is ever so slightly lighter than the pear. And this here, there's a fold here, and it just goes a little lighter. So with this, with the kneaded eraser, you can indicate that. All right. I'm going to use my 4H. This a little darker because I want to clearly indicate the speckle of light. And the speckle of light is only appears well once you have put dark around it. Speckle of light, from my perspective, I mean, you see all of this is light, is like completely white and washed out. But from my perspective, this is what I see. It's this section here, and then it continues like this. Like this, over here. And the edges of the speckle of light are usually very soft. But having the dark around it will help read it better. All right, so down here we have some reflected light that goes up. But this pear is a lot darker than my surface, so I gotta make sure I'll make it dark enough. And maybe that means that my background needs to be even darker. So this here needs to be extremely dark. That's my 4B that I'm using for this. You can go pretty dark with the 4B. So, I mean, I would need to do the whole page like this, but right now I can't. I don't want to take all the time. So this is the start of what it would look if you do your drawing with the kneaded eraser. It's just another approach. How about if you try it? So for the rest of the class today, I want you to either finish a drawing that you have started, or you can try and do a drawing that you've already done, but this time you can do it with the kneaded eraser. Or the other option is to do the same object, to draw the same object as last week, but this time put the light coming from the opposite direction. So if it was coming from the right, put it from the left. If it was coming from the left, put it from the right. Meanwhile, I just need to add the larger shadow that's on the table. Shadow closer to the object has a sharper edge. Away from the object, it becomes very, very loosey-goosey. And sometimes there's a mini shadow closer to the object within the big shadow. All right. So, I mean, it's not finished, but it gives an idea of how it can be done. So while you are doing this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the classes that are coming up. This is our last class of this session, and the next session will start on July 7th. In that session, there will be no drawing classes, only painting classes. And so the classes are on Tuesday at 1 and Tuesday at 7, and that's for 3 weeks. And that's also a free classes. Now in those classes, I will invite the students to bring your own painting to do. So either you can work on a painting that you started in class, never had a chance to finish it, or maybe you've always wanted to do a photo that you have, or a magazine. You found something in a magazine or online and you want to work on that. So I'll be there to guide you, but I will not do a formal class where I explain or I do a demonstration or I show you I have any preparation to do. I've realized that these classes are creating a lot of work for me to prepare, and I want to have I want to reduce this stress that I have